Hey everyone, Shawn Clement here, Wisdom in Golf, and today we broaden our horizons insofar as the diagonal stance. Now, if you look at Hogan's book and you see how in the longer clubs he has a little bit more of a closed stance, and the shorter clubs he has a little more of an open stance. And so we presented a video a few years back to plant the seed, and that seed has been fermenting and it's been growing in my brain. And in a few of my students, we have really helped them get a bigger backswing. So one of the things that prevents you from getting an effortless whip is gathering a full backswing. And for many of you, a more closed stance helps you, open up the backswing. And so let's look at a few items that we talk about. Now, if I'm playing hockey and I'm skating into a shot, I play hockey usually left-handed. So if I'm skating into a shot going toward the red flag, I'm skating into it forward. So as I'm approaching the puck, I'm going to be collecting the puck from here and releasing it out there. It's very much on a diagonal stance. And if I'm cutting grass and walking at the same time, well, you notice how now my weight is off the right. I can take a step. That's a diagonal stance going into the backswing. Now I can take a step. That's a diagonal stance going into the follow-through. So I can choose the direction of my cut. So if I wanted to cut to the left of that, well, notice my cut is going to the left, even though it looks like I have a closed stance. So the closed stance, we're finding out, has nothing to do with direction. And this finding out started out with, you remember the battering ram analogy? Well, if I had a battering ram and I wanted to ram it into the side of a door, now you'll notice how the ram is moving nicely through the door. However, I've got a full turn in both directions. So my rib cage is moving a full 180 in both directions to allow for that width. Well, I can still go through the door with a diagonal stance as well. And that's opened up a boatload of doors. And in our premium channel, we're having a very nice series upcoming in the next month that's really going to expound on that through all the clubs and all the shots, fades and draws, high, low, and woods versus wedges. And so we're going to demystify the whole shooting match for you. And in the meantime, we want you to open your horizons on that. And then you realize that intermediate point that we talk about at Wisdom in Golf, binocular vision is how humans operate. Side vision is an absolute farce for this machine. So that intermediate point that you use in front of you is very, very critical. Now, a couple of other disciplines just before we move on here. Let's say I'm playing tennis and I'm doing a nice tennis backhand. So it's still a diagonal stance, but it just depends on where I'm striking the tennis ball that will determine the direction that it's going to go on. If I'm going down the line, I'm striking the tennis ball a little bit later. And if I'm going cross court, I'm striking the tennis ball a little earlier, both with a diagonal stance. Same thing when you're playing baseball. So I bat left-handed in baseball. I'm waiting for the pitch. When the pitch comes, I'm moving into it diagonally. This is what gives me a front-to-back balance that is unparalleled. And that, for many of you, it is a big problem. So I know that a lot of our students have a tendency to fall forward and lose their posture during the swing. But if they go in a diagonal stance, they're going to find that much, much easier to support. So the center of gravity is much easier to support in a diagonal stance than it is in a square stance. So things are shifting, things are getting a little bit easier. And if you look at Matt Kuchar, Graham McDowell, and several other players on tour, especially when it comes to the woods and the driver, you're going to see a lot more diagonal stances out there. And for good reason, because it is a much more supportive stance for an outward pull that is required in the golf swing. So let's look now at a golf shot here. So if I have a 7-iron, and what's going to determine this approach, just like we saw in tennis, if I wanted to do a little fade, so notice I've got a ball in front here. Here's my intermediate point that I'm going to use, and I'm lining that up to right between the two flags here, between the red and the white flag. So I'm going to start this a little left of the red and fade it back to the red flag. So I am looking to start the ball right here. Now notice I have what you would call a closed stance to that. But my ball position, so if you look at, I got a closed stance, and I'm going to aim this stance a little bit more to the left. So you see how I'm doing that? Left, more left, more left. See how the ball position is staying forward in my stance? So I want to feel like it's going to be very easy to start the shot to the left and let it fade back to the red flag. So from here, it feels like I've got beautiful support. So I'm gathering to the left. See my takeaway? Top of backswing, it feels like the shot can stay to the left. So I'm gathering left and then releasing to the left. And you saw that ball started beautifully and it faded right back onto that red flag. So if I was going to hit a draw, I'm going to aim at the red, start it over the white, and draw it back to the red. So I am aiming over this intermediate point. If I play the ball too far forward, it feels like it's going to start left. If I play it too far back, it feels like it's going to start too far right. If I play it just back a little bit, now it feels like the ball can start to the right edge of that intermediate point. So the intermediate point always wins. This will determine your ball position after you've taken a stance that you feel you need to finish the backswing and release in the direction that you want it to go. So right now it feels like I can start the ball right here, right edge of that, and my club face is closed enough that that ball is going to come back. So I gather. Feels like now I can move to the right edge of that. Let's have a go. Absolutely perfect. Started just over the right edge of that white flag and it drew right back onto that red flag, and it's parked right next to the other ball that I hit to the left. And if you look at that divot, see that? There's your perfect divot that's starting right there to the right edge of that intermediate point. So the intermediate point is your compass. That's your North Star. And you can see that regardless of fade or draw, this diagonal stance is going to help you. And I find that with that foot back, I have a lot more room for that trail arm to come through. So that football drill, so look at football drill Shawn Clement. And we have a great football drill series on the premium channel as well. For those of you who are struggling with the delivery of that the kinematic sequence or the kinetic chain through the ball, you'll really get to see how through the ball you're going to be with that football drill or with that sword drill, right? So just very exciting times, some stuff that is really helping our students, especially those who have limited range of motion. And we're realizing that there's, many different ways to come to a natural conclusion of the shot that you're trying to hit. So I hope you got and enjoyed that, and we'll see you in the next one. All the best.